glory belong to God, who have created man and rearranged them in different types of nations and tribes. I will describe one tribe of people from Europe that is believed to be the oldest tribe in Europe beside Greeks and Romans, who formed nation of Albanians. Their geographic position is also in middle of two oldest people of Europe, between Italy, Rome, and Greece, Athens. What I find interesting is in name of this people, Illyrians, free people. In history of mankind, there was always someone there who tried to disturb, conquer, use, and manipulate with people. That's why they put message in their name that no one should try to rule them on corner. Data drawn from history and from linguistic, archaeological, and anthropological studies have led to the conclusion that Albanians are the direct descendants of the ancient Illyrians, and that the latter were natives of the lands they inhabited. Illyrian culture is believed to have evolved from the Stone Age and to have manifested itself in the territory of Albania toward the beginning of the Bronze Age, about 2000 BC. The Illyrians were not a uniform body of people, but a conglomeration of many tribes that inhabited the western part of Balkans, from what is now Slovenia in the northwest to and including the region of Epirus, which extends about halfway down the mainland of modern Greece. In general, Illyrians in the highlands of Albania were more isolated than those in the lowlands, and their culture evolved more slowly, a distinction that persisted throughout Albania's history. In its beginning, the Kingdom of Illyria comprised the actual territories of Dalmatia, Croatia. Even today, there is a small town in North Croatia called Ilirska Bistrica, what means in translation, Illyrian Clear Town, year edited 2014, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Montenegro, with a large part of modern Serbia. Shkodra Skutari was its capital, just as is now, the most important center of northern Albania. The earliest known king of Illyria was Hylas's means in translation, a star who is recorded to have died in the year 1225 BC. Even Julius Caesar have roots from Illyrians if we compare Hylas Julius have same pronunciation, because letter in Albanian language will sound like letter U. In English language, what in translation will mean star Caesar. But word name Julius in Italian have no meaning. The kingdom, however, reached its zenith in the 4th century BC, when Bard Hylas White Star, one of the most prominent of the Illyrian kings, united under scepter the kingdoms of Illyria, Molossia, Epirus, and a good part of Macedonia. But its decay began under the same ruler as a result of the attacks made on it by Philip of Macedon, father of Alexander the Great, in the year 232 BC. The Illyrian throne was occupied by Teuta, the celebrated queen whom historians have called Catherine the Great of Illyria. The land of Illyria was rich in minerals, iron, copper, gold, silver, and Illyrians became skillful in the mining and processing of metals. They were highly skilled boat builders and sailors as well. Indeed, their light swift galleys, known as Liburnae, were of such superior design that the Romans incorporated them into their own fleet as a type of warship called the Liburnian. In this book, I will describe many manipulations done by different ethnic groups towards Albanians in South Europe, where in a short period of time people there have changed their religion and political ideologies. South Europe, or so-called area, Balkan name given by Turks, which means bloody honey, they give such a name to this area because this area was beautiful and life there was. Sweet but always colored by. Plenty of spilt blood during many waged wars which have been done and still will be in this area. Southeast Europe is the place with a mixture of different kind of people and different religions who live in one area, what was always the reason of many wars there. The Albanian people was the last of all other people in Europe to form their nation, even though they are the oldest people of Europe, and flag because of many manipulation done to them, even from time of Alexander the Great. His mother was from Illyrian tribe from Epirus, but entire his glory was taken by Greeks, and they never mentioned that in his veins was Illyrian blood too. Greek people have speak Illyrian language until year 1851. 49% voted for Albanian language, and 51% voted for Greek language. On vote in Greek parliament, they decided to change language, which was not stopped until today. For example, Albania is not. Original name of Albanian people who lives in South Europe, the original name is Shqiperia, and original name of Albanian people is Shqipetar. What means if we translate the land of eagles in Albania has no meaning in Albanian language. There is a reason why neighbor countries call Shqiperia Albania, and that is because they try to prove that Albanian people come from Caucasus, and they are not. Origin people of Europe, so they say that in Caucasus existed one land called Albania. I will mention all rulers of Illyrians who later changed the name of nation into Albanians. King Hylas BC, King Bart Hylas BC, House of Progon. Progon 1190 to 1198. Gene Progoni 1198 to 1208. Timider Progoni 1208 to 1216. Others: Grigor Kimona 1215 to 1000. Grigor Kimona 1272 to 1294 in it. Angevin Dynasty, Charles I 1272 to 1285. 1285 to 1294. Charles II surrendered his rights to Albania to his son Philip II in 1294. Philip II reigned as Lord of the Kingdom of Albania. Lords of the Kingdom of Albania, 1294 to 1332 edit. Angevin Dynasty, Philip I 1294 to 1332. 1002. Albanians were an ancient, particularly in modern day. Albania, Kosovo, Montenegro, and parts of Croatia and Bosnia and Herzegovina from the 13th to the 1st century BC. They were a diverse group of tribes that shared cultural and linguistic ties, but were not a unified nation. Here are some key facts about the Illyrians. 1. Language. The Illyrians spoke a language that is now extinct, but it is believed to have been a branch of the Indo-European language family. 2. Culture. Illyrian culture was characterized by a strong oral tradition and a rich mythology. They were skilled craftsmen and traders, and their society was organized into tribes and clans. 3. Society. The Illyrians were organized into tribes and clans, with each tribe having its own chief or king. Their society was patriarchal, with men holding positions of power and women playing a subordinate role. 4. Religion. The Illyrians practiced a polytheistic religion, worshipping a pantheon of gods and goddesses, associated with nature, fertility, and the underworld. 5. Economy. The Illyrians were skilled traders and craftsmen, and their economy was based on agriculture, livestock, and trade. They were known for their fine pottery and metalwork. 6. Political organization. The Illyrians were organized into several tribes, each with its own chief or king. They also had a system of federalism, whereby the tribes were united under a central authority but maintained some degree of autonomy. 7. Relationships with other civilizations. The Illyrians had contact with other ancient civilizations, including the Greeks, Romans, and Macedonians. They were known for their military prowess and were often allies or enemies of these powers. 8. Decline and fall. The Illyrians declined and fell as a result of various factors, including internal conflicts, external invasions, and cultural assimilation. By the 1st century BC, they had been absorbed into the Roman Empire. Some notable Illyrian tribes include Ingardii, a powerful tribe that controlled much of modern-day Albania and Montenegro. Mesinoteriatai, a tribe that lived in modern-day Kosovo and were known for their skill in warfare. Yinaskordisi, a tribe that lived in modern-day Serbia and were known for their lightning raids and hit-and-run tactics. Tolantii, a tribe that lived in modern-day Albania and were known for their skill in metalworking and pottery. Overall, the Illyrians were a complex and diverse civilization that played an important role in the history of the Balkans. Despite their eventual decline and fall, they left a lasting legacy in the region and continue to fascinate historians and archaeologists today. The Progon family, Albanian Progoni, established the first Albanian state, 1. The Principality of Arbor, which fell under the influence of the Byzantine Empire, the Despotate of Epirus, and the Serbian Kingdom. Progon, the founder, held the title of Archon Lord, while one of his sons, Dimitri, held the title of Penhypersebastos. The family enjoyed a considerable degree of autonomy. The family disappears in sources after 1216, following the death of Dimitri. The Capetian House of Anjou, also known as the House of Anjou-Sicily and House of Anjou-Naples, was a royal house and cadet branch of the direct House of Capet. Founded by Charles I of Sicily, a son of Louis VIII of France, the Capetian king first ruled the Kingdom of Sicily during the 13th century. Later, the War of the Sicilian Vespers forced him out of the island of Sicily, leaving him with just the southern half of the Italian peninsula, the Kingdom of Naples. The house and its various branches would go on to influence much of the history of southern and central Europe during the Middle Ages, until becoming defunct in 1435. Historically, the house ruled Naples and Sicily, parts of Greece, Hungary, Croatia, and Poland. Rise of Charles I and his sons. Main articles: Guelphs and Ghibellines, and War of the Sicilian Vespers. The seated Charles I of Sicily is crowned by Pope Clement IV. A younger son of House of Capet, King Louis VIII of France the Lion, Charles was first given a noble title by his brother, Louis IX of France, who succeeded to the French throne in 1246. Charles was named Count of Anjou and Maine. The feudal county of Anjou was a western vassal state of the Kingdom of France, which the Capetians had wrested from the House of Plantagenet only a few decades earlier. Charles married the heiress of the County of Provence named Beatrice of Provence. She was a member of the House of Barcelona. This meant Charles' holdings were growing as Count of Provence. After fighting in the Seventh Crusade, Charles was offered by Pope Clement IV the Kingdom of Sicily, which at the time included not only the island of Sicily, but also the southern half of the Italian peninsula. The reason for Charles being offered the kingdom was because of a conflict between the papacy and the Holy Roman Empire, the latter of whom were represented by the ruling house of Hohenstaufen. It was at the Battle of Benevento that the Guelph Capetians gained the Sicilian kingdom from the Ghibelline Swabians. This was cemented after victory at Tagliacozzo. In keeping with the political landscape of the period, Charles is described by scholars as shrewd, energetic, and highly ambitious. He dreamed of empire. He signed the Treaty of Viterbo in 1267 with Baldwin II of Courtenay and William II of Villehardouin. One political alliance gave many of the rights of the Latin Empire to Charles and a marriage alliance for his daughter Beatrice of Sicily. The Byzantines had taken back the city of Constantinople in 1261, and this was a plan to take it back from Michael VIII Palaiologos. 2. It also recognized Charles' possession of Corfu and cities in the Balkans such as Durazzo, as well as giving him suzerainty over the Principality of Achaia and sovereignty of the Aegean Islands aside from those already held by the Republic of Venice. 1. For a while, Charles was preoccupied helping his French brother in the unsuccessful Eighth Crusade on Tunis. After this, he once again focused on Constantinople, but his fleet was wrecked in a freak storm off the coast of Trapani. With the elevation of Pope Gregory X, there was a truce between Charles and Michael in the form of the Council of Lyons, as Christians focused on improving ecumenical relations with hopes of regaining the Kingdom of Jerusalem back from the Muslims. Artistic depiction of the Sicilian Vespers. Charles had fully solidified his rule over Durazzo by 1272, creating a small kingdom of Albania for himself. Out of previously despotate of Epirus territory, he was well received by local chiefs. 4. Lands ruled by Louis the Great in the 1370s. Louis led successful campaigns from Lithuania to southern Italy. Charles was driven out of Sicily in 1282, but his successors ruled Naples until 1435. Charles II divided inheritance. This House of Anjou included the branches of Anjou-Hungary, which ruled Hungary 1308 to 1385, 1386 to 1386 to 1386, which ruled the remnants of the Latin Empire and Anjou, the Latin Empire, and Anjou to 1435, and Hungary 1385 to 1386. The line became extinct in the male line with the death of King Ladislas of Naples in 1414. and totally extinct with the death of his sister Joanna II in 1435. Branching out, Hungary, Poland, Naples, Taranto, Kingdom of Albania. The Kingdom of Albania, or Regnum Albaniae, was established by Charles of Anjou in the Albanian territory he conquered from the Despotate of Epirus in 1271. He took the title of King of Albania in February 1272. The kingdom extended from the region of Durrës, then known as Dyrrhachium, south along the coast to Butrint. A major attempt to advance further in direction of Constantinople failed at Th. The Despotate of Arta was a despotate established by Albanian rulers during the 14th century, when Albanian tribes moved into Epirus and founded two short-lived principalities there. 4. The Despotate of Arta was created after the defeat of the local despot Nikephoros II Orsini by the Albania tribesmen in the Battle of Achelous in 1359, and ceased to exist in 1416 when it passed to Carlo Istoko. 567. Creation edit. In the late spring of 1359, Nikephoros II Orsini, the last despot of Epirus of the Orsini dynasty, fought against the Albanians near river Achillouz, Aetolia. The Albanians won the battle and managed to create two new states in the southern territories of the Despotate of Epirus. Because a number of Albanian lords actively supported the successful Serbian campaign in Thessaly and Epirus, the Serbian Tsar granted them specific regions and offered them the Byzantine title of despots in order to secure their loyalty. The two Albanian lead states were: the first, with its capital in Arta, was under the Albanian nobleman Peter Losha, and the second, centered in Angelokastron, was ruled by Jin Vuospata. After the death of Peter Losha in 1374, the Albanian despotates of Arta and Angelokastron were united under the rule of Gjin Vuospata. At April 1378, the Grand Master of the Knights Hospitaller, Juan Fernandez de Heredia, set about to take Arta, but failed, and was captured in battle by Gjin Vuospata. Heredia was sold by Sparta to the Ottoman Turks for a huge price. Thomas II Preljubovic, the despot of Epirus, offered valuable help during the battle. However, this alliance didn't last for long. The territory of this despotate, at its greatest extent, 1374 to 1403, was from the Corinth Gulf to Acheron River in the north, neighboring with the Principality of Gjirokastar of John Genovese, another state created in the area of the Despotate of Epirus. The Despotate of Epirus managed to control in this period only the eastern part of Epirus, with its capital in Ioannina. During this period, the despot of Epirus, Thomas II Preljubovic, was in an open conflict with Gjin Spada. In 1375, Gjin Vuospata started an offensive in Ioannina, but he could not invade the city. Although Spada married with Thomas's sister, Helena, their war did not stop. Fall of the Despotate. After the death of Gjin Vuospata in 1399, the Despotate of Arta weakened continuously, and the Spada family was involved in civil war. Among the animosities with the rulers of Ioannina, Gjin's successor, Maurice Spada, had to deal with the intentions of the Venetians and of Count Carlo I Tocco of Cephalonia. Meanwhile, Ottoman incursions were intensified as they were occasionally called by Despot Issa de Buondelmonti of the Despotate of Epirus. After the death of de Buondelmonti in 1411, the throne was offered to his nephew, Carlo y Tocco. Even though his gain was accompanied by a great loss that the forces of John Zenobises inflicted upon his army, he would later subject the leaders of southern Albania. In spite of Maurice Thanet's victory over Carlo in 1412, the Albanians failed to take Ioannina. On the contrary, not long after killing Maurice in battle in 141-45, Carlo advanced on Arta. In 1416, he defeated Jakub Spada and conquered Arta, thus annexing the despotate. Local legacy edit. The city of Arta was relatively unknown during the period of the Albanian rule, 1358 to 1416. The Albanian leaders, not accustomed to living in cities as mountaineers, acquired legally Byzantine titles and tried to adopt Byzantine state structure, although no architectural activity has been reported for this period. Little seems to have changed in Arta, and the Albanian and Greek population coexisted peacefully in the city. Thopia family. First notices. One member of Thopia family is mentioned around the 1270s with the title of Miles. At that time they were holding a territory between Mat and Shkumbin, and had close ties with the Angevins and the Papal States. They promised to convert from Orthodox to Catholic faith because difference between Stura was not huge, and for a political reason they did not mind just to change name of religion that is same type, and therefore their domains were confirmed also by the Pope. As such, they were vassals of Charles of Anjou. Their domains were also confirmed by the Angevins in 1338. At that period, a person named Tanush Thopia is mentioned as the head of the family, while his brother Dominic was a high cleric and served as a counsel of Robert of Anjou. A Serenissimo Principe Domino Rapido Thopia and his son Giorgio is mentioned in a Latin inscription dated 1381 and found in the monastery of St. John Vladimir near Elbasan. In the same monastery, the following inscription in Greek was found: Epsilon Omicron Silon Tawalpha. Tawalpha Sigma Etamio Fadel Teta Alpha Alpha Epsilon Tete Epsilon Nun Omicron Epsilon. Mega Carlothopia, that is the signs of a great lord, Carlothopia. 4. Ties with the Anjou family. According to John Muzaka genealogy, Andrea Thopia, son of Tanush, kidnapped Helena of Anjou, the illegitimate daughter of Robert of Anjou, which was on the way of marrying the Prince of Morea according to her father's wish. But a storm forced her to disembark in Durrës, and during her permanence there, she fell in love with Andrea. At first, Robert didn't react, while later on he invited them on his court on Naples, where he killed them both. From this marriage, the unfortunate couple had 2 sons, Karl Thopia and George Thopia. 5. Princedom of Albania. Under Karl Thopia, the Thopia family reached its zenith. After the death of Stephen Dusan, he could manage to capture much of the central Albania. In 1362, his forces attacked the city of Durrës, then in Angevin hands. Although he couldn't capture the city, he forced them to pay annual tribute to his family. In 1368, Karl managed to capture the city of Durrës. Around 1370, Karl attacked the dominions of Muzaka family, and managed to capture from them the territory between Shkumbin and Semen. Now the territory of Thopia extended from Mat River to Semen, reaching its maximum extension. This aggressive behavior created a complicated situation and many enemies to the princedom. In 1376, Louis of Evreux, Duke of Durazzo, who had gained the rights on the Albanian kingdom from his second wife, attacked and conquered the city. However, in 1383, Karl Topia took control of the city again. Muzaka family allied with Balsa II against Thopia. In the beginning of 1385, the city of Durrës was captured by Balsa II in a surprise attack. Karl called for Ottoman help, and Balsa's forces were defeated in the Battle of Savra. Topia recaptured the city of Durrës the same year and held it until his death in 1388. Afterwards, the city of Durrës was inherited by his son, George, Lord of Durrës. In 1392, George surrendered the city of Durrës and his domains to the Venice. 8. The end of princedom. After the death of Karl, his dominion was divided between his daughter, Helena Thopia, and his son, George Thopia. George kept the city of Durrës and his surroundings, which he later surrendered to Venice Republic, while Helen Thopia kept the city of Cruje and its surroundings. She was married to Marco Barbadigo, a Venetian noble. The Count Niketa Thopia, a cousin of George, ruled in the region south of Durrës. In 1403, Niketa Thopia managed to capture the city of Cruje from his cousin Helena, thus gaining another part of the territory previously held by Thopia. He had good relations with Venice, which was interested in having some buffer zone between them and advancing Ottoman army. However, in 1412, Niketa Thopia suffered a heavy defeat from the forces of Theodore II Muzaka. He himself fell prisoner, and with the intervention of Raguzan Republic he was released, but only after giving some territories around Shkumbin River to Muzaka family. Upon his death in 1415, the castle of Cruje fell to the Ottomans. 9. John Feltendrionizen 417. John Castrioti or John Castria. 13. Or John V was an Albanian nobleman member of the Castrioti family and the father of Skanderbeg. He governed the territory between Cape of Rodan and Debar and had at his disposal an army of 2,000 horsemen. His different titles used in sources include Lord of Umathia and Vumanestia, or simply Lord of Mat. In Venetian sources he was also referred to as Dominum in Albania, English, Lord in Albania. John Castrioti was born in Debar. Not in citation given better, source needed. John's father was nobleman Pal Castrioti, who held 2 villages as Signor de Signa e de Gardi Postesi. These 2 villages were located on the mountain of Chidna northwest of Debar. John Castrioti managed to expand the territory of Castrioti's domain, consisting of a couple of villages in the region of Debar, by capturing the region of Mat. John married Vojsava Tripalda from Lower Polog, area around present-day Tetovo, citation needed Macedonia, and had 9 children with her, 4 sons and 5 daughters. The sons' names were Stanisha, Riposh, Kostandin, and George Skanderbeg, and the daughters' names were Mara, Jelena, Angelina, Vlachka, and Mamika. The oldest daughter of John Castrioti, Maria Castrioti, also called Mamika, married Muzakitopia. John Castrioti was also the name of the grandson through George Castrioti. Life edit. Like other noblemen from Albania, John also became Ottoman Muslim vassal after 1385. 14. In 1402, together with other Ottoman vassals from Albania, he supported Bayezid I in the Battle of Ankara. John Castrioti was one of the noblemen who were guarantors for Balsa III and Jelena Balsic in the treaty they concluded with Venetians on June 6, 1408 during the First Scutari War. At the beginning of 1412, Venetians offered 1,000 ducats of yearly provisions to John Castriot and to Durasevic brothers to switch sides and leave Balsha III, but they refused. Castrioti accepted the suzerainty and was made a citizen of Venice in 1413, along with his inheritors. 18. Castrioti maintained good relations with Venice after becoming an Ottoman vassal between 1415 and 1417, and was not likely to endanger the relations by seizing the Cape from Venice. 19. The Venetians tried to bribe Castriotis and Ducaginis to fight against the Zeta in 1419, but it seems without success. In the period 1419-1426, John was an ally of Serbian despot Stefan Lazarevic, who was also an Ottoman vassal. Lazarevic had been ceded lordship of Zeta from Balsa III in 1421, but the Venetians did not recognize him, holding on to the occupied Zitan coast and Bohana, including Drivast. In August 1421, Lazarevic led armies into Zeta and took Sveti Esrdice, Drivast, and Bar. The Venetians concluded a truce and now held only the towns of Skadar, Ulcinj, and Budva. When Lazarevic demanded the surrender of these towns, Venice refused and war resumed. A number of John Castrioti's Albanians, led by one of his sons, joined Lazarevic immediately upon the arrival of the latter in Zeta. According to Fanoli, it was Stanicia who was sent by his father, together with auxiliary forces, to help Serbian despot to capture Scutari from Venetians. Lazarevic besieged Scutari, probably in June 1422, and for a year it seemed that Venice would have lost their possessions, however. Supported by some local Albanians, Venice managed to break the siege in December 1422. In January 1423, Venice bribed and won over the Pamaliates on Bohana, and then bought over several tribal leader in or near Zeta, the Pastrovici, John Castrioti, who had extended to the outskirts of Alessio, the Ducagians, and Koja Zaharija. Though none of these were mobilized militarily by Venice, they left the ranks of Lazarevic's army, thus became a potential danger to Lazarevic. Although Venetian Admiral Francesco Bembo offered money to Castrioti, Ducagins, and to Koja Zaharija in April 1423 to join the Venetian forces against Serbian despotate, offering 300 ducats to John Castrioti. They refused. From time to time, one or more of John's sons were sent as hostages to Ottoman court. In 1428 to John Castrioti, They refused Venetian Senate because they converted to Islam, and Skanderbeg's participation in Ottoman military campaigns against the Christians was proof for that. In an attempt to relieve Ottoman pressure during the siege of Thessalonica, Venice inspired G. John to rebel against Ottomans in 1428. In August 1428, sent his envoys, Priest Dimitrije and Lord Murat, to present to Venetians the letters written by Sultan during past 5 years since Venetians captured Thessalonica in 1423. By those letters, Sultan sent orders to John to attack Venetian possessions in Albania. Since he refused to cooperate with the Ottomans, John asked Venetians to provide him with a safe conduct if Ottomans would attack him. 27. In April 1430, after Ottomans captured Thessalonica, they captured most of John's land. Ottoman forces were led by Isak Beg, who was a Sanjakbi of the Sanjak of Skopje. He positioned Ottoman garrison in 2 John's castles and destroyed rest of them. Isak Beg allowed John to govern a very small part of the territory because Ottomans held John responsible only for disobedience because he was Muslim, not for the treason. 28. John Castrioti joined an unsuccessful uprising against the Ottoman Empire led by Yerj Arianiti between 1432 and 1436. And was again defeated by the Ottoman forces of Isak Beg. Hilandar Monastery. John died in on May 4th, 1437. 5. The territory previously controlled by John Castrioti was annexed by the Ottomans and listed in their registers as land of Yuvan Ili. Yuvan was John's new name when he converted to Islam religion. Until 1438. A part of John Castrioti's estates, comprising 9 villages, was awarded to Skanderbeg as his timar, and in May 1438, those 9 villages had been awarded to Andrei Carlo. The granting of these villages to Andrei Carlo must have upset Skanderbeg 31, who requested to be granted with control over the Zemet in Mysia, consisting of his father's former domain. That's why Skanderbeg left Ottoman army and organized his own army and formed Nation of Albanians, direct related tribe from Illyrians. Sanjakbe, probably of the Sanjak of Ohrid, objected Skanderbeg's request. Administration. Some of John's subordinates held the title of Kefale, as it was used in many regions of Albania at that time, like in Valona and Kanin. In the court of John Castriot, there was also a position of Selnik. Ivan's Chelniks had the same, or similar duties like those of Stefan Lazarevic, or Gurad Brankovic being responsible for judiciary and civil affairs. Collecting the custom duties from Ragusan traders. Exporting the grain and trading with salt was an important source of income of John Castrioti. Venetian Republic attempted to introduce its own units of measure on marketplaces in Scutari, Durazzo, and Alessio since the beginning of 1410. This intention caused confusion, which was a reason for Gian Castriot to complain through his envoys in Venice. In January 14, 10 Venetians accepted Gian's demands to measure grain and other products exported by him the way they were previously measured. On February 25, 1420, John Castriot wrote a letter in the Serbian language to merchants from Ragusa Dubrovnik. Based on the order of the despot of Serbia when they would travel from Ragusa to Prizren, they had to use the route through Shkodër in Albania, Veneta, and the Castriot's land, instead of the previous route through the land under control of the small feudal lords and highland tribes of Montenegro. With that letter, John informed merchants from Dubrovnik that they were granted safe conduct when passing through regions under his control, on their way from Suffredage to Prizren. In March 1422, John asked Venice to allow Ragusan traders to travel to his territory in Suffredage through Alessio instead of Scutari, which was allowed starting from August. After the death of Balsa in 1421, Venetians promised to allow Castriotti to collect salt produced in Durrës. Because of the reduced production, Venice did not respect its promise. John tried to avoid the monopoly of Venetian Republic and built his own salt evaporation ponds. In 1424, Venetians forced him to destroy all of them because they noticed some of their convoys directed to collect salt in Durrës never appeared there. At the beginning of the 15th century, Suffredage, important former marketplace on the Adriatic Sea, near Lecce, was a possession of Jonama family, and in 1428 it was under John's control. At that time, region of Suffredage was rich with forests, and the wood was transported through its port to Ragusa. On August 17, 1428, John complained through his representatives in Venice because he was not allowed to collect salt in Durrës. His religion was directly influenced by the international balance of political powers. It is believed that a popular saying in southern Albania, where the sword is, there lies religion, Albanian, ku eshte shpata, eshte feja, have originated from John Castriotti, 44, when he was an ally of Venice in period 1407 to 1410. He was Roman Catholic. After he allied himself with Stefan Lazarevic, despot of Serbian despotate in period 1419 to 1426, he converted to Orthodoxy, and in 1431 he was converted to Islam, and he became famous vassal of the Ottoman Empire. 43. According to Noli, he died Roman Catholic. According to the archives of the Hilandar Orthodox different type of Christianity monastery on Mount Athos, he took monastic vows there and received the name Joachim, becoming an Orthodox monk where he died. According to Ottoman archivists, he died as Muslim. This is proof that all kingdoms try to steal glory of noble man, but God will give the answers in day of judgment. Injustice did not end here. Even history of his son, George Castriotti Skenderbeg, was stolen. Catholics once again manipulated and tried to steal the fame of famous warrior Skenderbeg, and claimed that he died as Catholic on other side of country. Serbia Orthodox Serbs claim he was Serbian, but all Skenderbeg's life is known that he was Muslim and lived together with Ottomans where he get educated until he decided to help his people form the nation of Albanians. When he formed Nation of Albanians, at that time, Catholic Christians was minority in that region, and in nature of Skenderbeg was always to protect minorities and unprotected people. That event Catholic Christians of that region misused and claimed that he become Catholic for what they have zero proofs. It is very sad that somebody claim that so honorable people who form entire nation is capable of changing beliefs like changing socks. That is not possible. This royal family, when they converted to Islam, they did not change their religion again. No one can say that this family converted to Islam because of fear of Ottoman Muslims, because these people become famous Secos. They did not fear. They decided to believe in one God, and they chose their religion to be God's religion, Islam. George Castrioti, 1443 to 1444. The Albanian nation was formed by a famous Albanian warrior called Skanderbeg, who lived in XV century during the time of Ottoman Empire. Skanderbeg was born in Kruja from John Castrioti, Lord of Middle Albania. George Castrioti attended military school in the Ottoman Empire and was named Iskandar Bey, which in Turkish means Lord Alexander. They give him this name because of respect that he gained from Muslim Ottoman Turks. Skanderbeg was distinguished as one of the best officers in several Muslim Ottoman campaigns both in Asia Minor and in Europe, and the Sultan appointed him general. He even fought against Greeks, Serbs, and Hungarians, but before he returned to Europe, he was engaged in East Asia. But because of strong resistance that Turks have received from Albanian people in South Europe, advisor of Muslim Ottoman leader suggested to Sultan to draw Skanderbeg from Asia and send him in Albania because he is from the same people and he know their tactics and nature of fighting. Sultan Murat II gave him the title Vali, which made him the general governor of some provinces in central Albania. He was respected everywhere. In year 14, 30 Albanian people was left alone. Nobody protected them. They was attacked from all sides, Turks, Serbians, Italians. At that time, several fractions, Venetian and Vatican, and even from Vatican, politically, even Vatican, have made peace treaty with the Ottoman Empire on year 1430. From fear, all this happening have further pressed Skanderbeg to return to his region and support his people and country after his father, Jean Castrioti, died on 1442. After his father's death, Ottoman ruler decided to give control of Albanian region to other Colonel Hassan B. General, and by this decision, throne was taken away from Skanderbeg means Skander General. This made Skanderbeg to leave Ottoman army and create his army on his own. This moment, Catholic Church took an advantage to present not true picture of Skanderbeg's history. They claimed that Skanderbeg had changed religion. On other side, Ottoman Muslim ruler was angry at him also because Skanderbeg left his army, and he decided to make war against Skanderbeg. I will mention in this book one fact. Skanderbeg did not want to fight Turks, but he was just defending himself and his people at that period of time. It was not strategic to fight against powerful empire while your forces are weak, but Skanderbeg was continuously attacked by angry Turks for letting them and trying to prevent them to control Albanian region. Vatican Italian state have continuously sent him support from fear of powerful Ottoman army year 1443, because they knew if Ottoman crashed Skanderbeg, they will be next stop for Skanderbeg. This offer was also favorable in order to manage to make his weak. Nathan survived surrounded by many powerful enemies around him. In 1443, during the battle against the Hungarians of Hunyadi Nish, in present-day Serbia, he abandoned the Ottoman army and captured Kruja. Above the castle he rose the Albanian flag, a red flag with a black double-headed eagle, the present-day Albanian flag, and pronounced to Skanderbeg's countrymen the famous words, "I have not brought you liberty, I found it here among you," which means that he intended to bring Islamic religion, but he found out that most of Albanian people already has been converted to Islam, but the reason why they resist Ottoman Muslim was because the Ottomans in that time have changed Islamic rules of tax, fees, and made them to high, as they supposed to be, in which poor Albanian people could not afford to pay dot at that time. Even today, Albanian population make minimum of 70% of Muslims, 23% Catholics, and rest are Orthodox Christians. That's why Skanderbeg's countrymen, the famous words, "I have not brought you liberty, I found it here among you." During the next 25 years he fought, with forces rarely exceeding 20,000 against the most powerful army of that time, and defeated it for 25 years. In 1466 and 1467, the conqueror of Constantinople led the Turkish army himself against Skanderbeg and failed. The Ottoman Empire attempted to conquer Kruja 24 times and failed all 24 of them. Kruja, under the direction of Skanderbeg, defeated the Turkish army led by the Sultan Mehmed, etc., for a quarter of a century. As the British military strategist Wolfe has said, Skanderbeg surpassed all the captains, both ancient and modern, in his ability to lead a small defensive army. Skanderbeg was born on 1405. Unfortunately, history of Skanderbeg have right Catholic priest called Marin Barletti. Originally, he was from Italian small city Barletta in South Italy. He started with mistakes on history in the beginning of his book, when he said that Ottoman Turks have taken Skanderbeg George Castrioti when he was a small child. That was not true at the time when he was taken away from his parents, John Castrioti Catholic. At that time, he was ruler of one province, and his mother, called Vaisava Voislava in Serbian language, was Orthodox. Skanderbeg was a grown man at that time. Turkish strategy was to take rulers' kids as guarantee that ruler of conquered provinces will not revolt. Murat II, 1421, came to power, which means Skanderbeg was a grown man at that time, and not like Marin Barletti, right in his book Full of Conspiracy, organized by Catholic Vatican at that time in order to change history fame for their religious interests. Ruler of Ottoman Empire at that time conquered Albania and captured Skanderbeg's father, John Castrioti, and took his son as guarantee for peace in region. Following mistake by Marin Barletti is that he was wrong when he said the Turks took all 4 sons of John Castrioti, and he further makes wrong accusations that 3 other sons was poisoned by Turks. Albanian historic documents have proof that his 3 brothers of Skanderbeg have lived during years 1430. What more, one of Skanderbeg's brother's son was his fierce enemy called Hamza. If this is true, what Marin Barletti say, that Turks have killed his small all 3 brothers, how come Hamza was born if his father died as child? What is proof that Catholic priest is writing all not correct facts about Skanderbeg George Castrioti? Reason for writing that Turks have poisoned Skanderbeg's brother is to increase hate between Albanians and Turks and to present Muslims as bad. But Venedict Republic in Italy was well informed about Skanderbeg, and they knew that Skanderbeg did not change his religion, and among his army was Albanian Muslims that had followed him, trained by Ottoman Turks. It is nothing new that Muslim army have made wars among themselves. This thing happened between Skenderbeg and Albania army and Turks because of political reasons, what did not mean that Skenderbeg was converted to Catholic religion. During Alfonso time, Skenderbeg had fight against Italian army in South Italy. I also can say that he was reconverted back to Islam. But all this was political wars, did not have to do anything with Skenderbeg's religion. It is real miracle how Skenderbeg could survive for 25 years and keep control of his territory of Albania at that time when Ottoman war machine had wiped out everything in front of them until Vienna, capital of Austria. Only two armies have opposed the Ottoman army at that time. One Hunyadi from Hungary and Skenderbeg of Alnania. Very soon, Hunyadi was defeated in Belgrade region, and only army left in Europe was a small army of Skenderbeg, which Rome and Vatican could not afford to lose. That's why they have supported him, by all means even appointed him as imperator. Statement was written on his helmet that they give him as gift. Helmet and his sword are today in Austrian Museum in Vienna. Italian, Venetian, Venedig army have played many times dirty politics against Skenderbeg in Albanian region that have made Skenderbeg fight against them. They always tried to manipulate with him for their own interest. Battle of Drine. Skenderbeg have killed 2,500 Venetian Catholic soldiers and captured 500. All this proved that Skenderbeg have fight political wars in a region in year 1448. Ruler of Napoli province in Italy have noticed importance of Skenderbeg in Europe, and he make alliance with him and gave him 2,500 troops as support. In year 1455, Ottoman army attacked them and killed all 2,500 of them and other 20,000 of Skenderbeg army. Following years 1457, Skenderbeg reorganized himself and counterattacked Ottoman army and defeated them. For this success, Paps of Italy, Calixto III, give him present golden crown and written on it, Atletico Christi. By this axe, they always tried to label Skenderbeg as Christian. This was always dirty strategy that they always try to manipulate, with Skenderbeg pretending to be his friend. But an end after have promised to give him army to break peace treaty. With Ottomans, Pope Pius II never keep his promise, and he never sent support army. And he left Skenderbeg alone to fight war that was in interest of Italy to weaken Ottomans. They just give him empty crown with initials of imperator of non-existing army that they promised him to give him. There are old documents in archives. On year 1457, Skenderbeg personally went in Italy to meet Paps and claim the army that he promised to send in order to fight against Ottomans, and Paps, highest rank in Catholic Church, refused him. Skenderbeg went back to Albania and continued to struggle alone with his remaining army to protect his people and country from invading forces of Ottoman Empire. I will describe periods of time in Skenderbeg's important campaign in defense of Albania. Year 1458. Skenderbeg make peace treaty for 10 years with legendary ruler of Ottoman Muslim Empire, Mehmed Fatih, which agreement Skenderbeg break himself after he was false promised by Paps to receive entire army of Europe as support. Year 1461. Skenderbeg went in Italy with 3,000 of his cavalry army to help his friend Alonso's son, Ferdinand, and bring him back to throne of Napoli. Skenderbeg have fight against ruler of Italy called Prince Balso Rosini. Skenderbeg destroyed all Italian forces of Prince Balso Rosini and executed entire his army. minus 1,462 Skenderbeg returns to Albania. 1463, make peace treaty with Ottoman Empire in Skopje. 1463, great betrayal of Pope Pius II. He promised to send an entire army from Europe and appoint Skenderbeg as Imperator of all Italy if he canceled peace treaty with Ottoman S, but he never kept his promise. After Skenderbeg begins war with Ottoman Empire, Skenderbeg was so upset until he went personally to meet Pabst in Italy, but he was refused. 1463 to 1466, Skenderbeg fights war on his own in Europe. Against Ottoman Empire ruler Muslim army was so angry because Skenderbeg had break peace treaty and crushed his army. For following 3 years, 20,000 Albanian soldier was killed. Skenderbeg's General Moisiu was captured and sent to Istanbul prison. 1468, on 17 January, Skenderbeg dies. Mehmet Fatih capture most of the key cities in Albania. 1478, entire Albania was conquered by Ottoman Muslim army and ruled for next 400 years. At that time, Italian countries was divided in 5 republics, among whose Napoli was strongest, so Venedig, Napoli, Ferenc, Milano, and Vatican. Very important date, May 29, 14. Ruler of Ottoman army Mehmet Fatih conquered Constantinople. In that time was city like today's New York in power, and he changed city name from Constantinople to Istanbul. In that time that city was called New Rome, and by conquering this city he became new imperator called Mehmet Fatih. This man was more famous in history than Skenderbeg, true legendary man. Mehmet Fatih, who was mentioned even by Muhammad, last messenger of God, be peace upon him, many hundred years earlier, saying, in famous day in Battle of Uhud, when Muslims was surrounded, and some start saying, this is our end. Muhammad, be peace upon him, said, end of Muslims will not be before Muslims conquer Constantinople. What great army will be that, and what great leader will lead that army? Mehmet Fatih. This moment changed everything. Italy now needed Skenderbeg to support them, and Skenderbeg needed Italy for assistance in order to protect himself from powerful Ottoman army at that time. Italian divided regions now needed to unite and find someone who will fight their defensive war in Balkan against Muslim Ottoman Empire. And best leader for that was Skenderbeg, because he was in emergency situation and in frontline region in the way of Ottoman army. But after death of Napoli King Alfonso, with whom Skenderbeg have received help and arms, his son called Skenderbeg to help him wipe out rival family princes who wanted to claim his throne. Skenderbeg went in South Italy with his army and defeated enemy of his friend in South Italy. By this, we see that most of battles of Skenderbeg was political nature, but Catholic Vatican wanted to make use of Jews and change history, and claimed that Skenderbeg was converted to Catholicism again. They gave him many presents with Christian symbols, but this does not mean that they could influence way of his belief in religion. At this period of time, Vatican and Italian republics was too weak to oppose Ottoman Muslim army. That's why they even appointed Skenderbeg to be leader of all European Christian army in order to stop Ottomans. Of course, this was in his political favor of what Skenderbeg accepted, but he never accepted label that he's Catholic. He was known with long beard until his death. Beard was not tradition of Catholic Christians at that time, it is Muslim tradition. Even Paps Pius II, leader of all Catholic Christians, did not have long beard. He was totally shaven face because that was not tradition of Catholic Christians. After Skanderbeg's death from natural causes in 1468 in Lajja, his soldiers resisted the Turks for the next 12 years, then 10 years under the direction of Lek Dugajin, till at June 16, 1478, when it fell definitively to the Sultan Mehmed in 1480, Albania was finally conquered by Ottoman Empire. After the Ottomans took their dearly won castle of Kruja, they rebuilt the walls on the northern side with openings for firearms to make Kruja as impregnable against the Albanians as it had been, impregnable against themselves. The Catholic history and media say that the Turkish found the grave of Skanderbeg in St. Nicholas Church of Lejja. They opened it and held his bones like talismans for luck. But for all this, they have no evidence because the Islamic way of believing do not allow that Muslim can believe in anything except one God, and it is strongly forbidden in Islam to take any kind of talismans as symbol of luck or protection. Christian history tried to convince Albanian people that Skanderbeg in his end converted to Christianity again. That's why. They say that his bones was found in church, and for that, they have no evidence in all this. They say because they wanted to propose to Albanian Muslims to reconvert to Christianity like their leader Skanderbeg. As I proof that Christians have no evidence is that is not a tradition in Christianity to make graves in church. Second proof is that if Skanderbeg has been returned to Christianity, all his followers and people will return in Christianity with him because they was free from Turks, and it was no reason for fear from them. How many historicals say that Albanians became Muslim because of fear from Ottoman Turks? Anyway, during Skanderbeg has lead his people they was not under Ottoman Islamic occupation. That means that they could converted to Christianity back without fear from Ottoman Muslims. But why? Albanian people still remain 80% Muslims. Today, among complete Albanian people, Muslims, population is 80% Catholic, 15%, 4% is Orthodox Christian. There are two main source history books written about Skanderbeg's life. One, first source is written in 1480 in Venetia, Italy, by one Albanian writer whose name is not known except his nickname, Antivarino, which means a man from Tivar place in Albania. Two, second source, A Piratarum Principis Impressum Romae, which means History of Skanderbeg's Life, written by priest Marin Barletti, whose name was given upon Italian city Barletta, southeast Italy. And actually, he was not Albanian. Date of birth and death of this writer is not known. All this info is proof to us that no one can know exact scenario of whether Skanderbeg reconverted to Christianity, how Christian history and media claim. Also, another type of Christians, Orthodox Serbs, have tried to still glory of Skanderbeg, and they say that Skanderbeg was neither Catholic, how Italian history say, neither Muslim, how Muslims say, but Serbs claim that Skanderbeg was Orthodox. Serb in this I will present. From the one part of Serbian history book written by Slobodan Jarcevic, Serbian historical Dr. Vladan Djorgovic writes that a lot of Serbs have converted to Islam in Middle Ages, but the Serbs was only one who changed, and nationality together with religion, what is absurd because all people in the world who have converted to Islam, no of them have changed nation. Serbian history say that all Albanian have changed their religion and become Muslims, how the Turks will give them more rights. That's why and many Serbs became Muslims and changed their nation and became Albanian. And among this converted Serbs who converted, a nation came Skenderbeg. But if the Serbs have changed religion from the fear of Turks, they should change their nation and became Turks and not Albanians, but Serbian history manipulate the situation only because intending to steal Skenderbeg's glory for their nation. Skenderbeg today is the national hero of Albania and all Albanians people all over the world. Interesting thing is that the Orthodox Christian Serbs have also tried to steal Skenderbeg. They said that Skenderbeg was neither Catholic nor Albanian. They claimed that he was Orthodox Serb. All this manipulation was possible because Albanian people have lived in darkness of the worst type of communism which have ever existed in the world, and they did not have access to real knowledge and access in truth. Their previous communist government have lied to people 60 years telling them that Albanian people are the richest people in the world, and that's why the government do not allow them to travel in other countries because they will be robbed by other foreign people. But actually they was the poorest people in all Europe. So when the Christians have managed to blind Albanians people, it was easy for them to write their history how they and that's why they have decided to still so important. Historical person called Skenderbeg and write in history that before he died, he converted back to Christianity, how this will be a big reason for 85% of Muslims in Albania to convert to Christianity back. Even Russian communist president in that time, Stalin, have blamed Albanian government that they have started to deviate from communism because of Albanian extremism in communist ideas. But even Russians could not stop Albanian dictator government because they received direct help from Vatican and whose interest was to keep Albanian Muslims blind in the worst type of communism designed by Catholic Vatican. What more, the Serbs have tried to steal the history of origin of Albanian people. I will prove this my statement with a mention of one part of the book written by one Serb, historical and Serbo-Croatian, according to last knowledgeable documents people so-called. Arbanas, other peoples call them Albanians, and they call themselves Skiptar. They came from Caucasus place in Russia, but actually Serbs are the one who came from Russia. The evidence is their very similar language, like Russian language, and Albanian language is totally different from Russian and very similar to Italian language. Serbs say in this book that Albanian people was brought in Europe by Arabs when they have conquered Sicily in 827 to 878. In South Italy, Sicily was divided in two parts, Islamic Sicily and Christian Sicilian from this moment came the name. Two Sicily Serbian historicals say that how in that time 1043 year Serbian people have fight against Byzantine Empire. They brought some Albanian people which have decided to fight against Byzantines. Name of the Serbian army commander was George Maniac. After they was defeated near Doiran Lake, Byzantine have accepted Serbs in their army, but not in foreigners Albanians. In that time, Albanians have asked, so-called in this book, local Serbs of Europe to allow Albanians to settle near the mountain in Jablanica, what so-called generous Serbs have allowed them. The Serbian writers say that S.Y. The Turks have called Albanian people are not, which means, according to Serbian writer, those who did not return, what is not correct. I speak Turkish language, and are not means one kind of hard peanut. I have talked with some Turkish historical, which say the Turks have give them that name because Albanians was small but hard to defeat them. Even this compliment Christian Serbs have steal from Albanian people. Serbian famous national writer Petar Petrović Njegoš, where he used this compliment in his famous book Gorski Vijenak, saying, TVRD Geora Voka Kudnavata, Zube Slomi Algane Polomi, which means, the hard hazelnut is strange. Fruit, you will break your tooth. If you try to break it, but actually this Turks have, say for Albanian people. Petar Petrović Njegoš was Christian Orthodox priest, and Christian leader which have lived in church monastery in Cetin in Montenegro. The Serbs, even they was more numerous than Albanians, did not represent any danger to. Ottomans, Turks, and Turks have ruled them 500 years, but not an Albanians. The main reason why the IIS wanted to be independent was that because in the 18th century Ottoman Empire became weak in many times, retreated from Albanian's territory under the pressure of Austrian Empire, allowing the Serbs and Austrians to enter and rule Albanian territory. Albanian people, that's why. Even during the Skanderbeg's time, decided to form their own security army. Skanderbeg was one of the first persons to discover that the Ottoman Empire have changed. Islamic rules under the pressure of West Christian countries. The rules which famous historical Malcolm describes like canceling the Islamic law if one Muslim changes religion in, other should not be punished, and when Turks have simply started to trade the Bosnian and Albanian territory. Skanderbeg found out this during the battle against Hunyadi. It is not only Skanderbeg, famous person who the Christian history and media try to return in their religious glory. Second historical famous person was Omer Pasalatas, the Serbian Christian, very famous conqueror in Turkish army who converted to Islam. But Serbian history say that before the end of his life, Omer Pasalatas converted to Christianity back, for what they have zero evidence. The following text is from one Orthodox Christian history book where they say that Omer Pasalatas converted to Christianity back. Period of world wars. Organized military action had a negligible effect in attaining national independence. Some revolutionary activity occurred during the rise of Albanian nationalism in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Albanian insurgents and Ottoman forces clashed as early as 1884, but although Albanians resisted Ottoman oppression against themselves, they supported the Ottoman Turks in their hostilities with the Greeks and Slavs. By 1901, about 8,000 armed Albanians were assembled in Shkodër, but a situation resembling anarchy more than revolution prevailed in the country during the early 1900s. There were incidents of banditry and pillage, arrests, and many futile Ottoman efforts to restore order. Guerrilla activity increased after 1906, and there were several incidents that produced martyrs but were not marked by great numbers of casualties, although it was disorganized and never assumed the proportions of a serious struggle. The resistance was, nevertheless, instrumental in maintaining the pressure that brought international attention to the aspirations of Albanian nationalists who proclaimed Albania's independence on November 28, 1912. Albanian forces played a minor role in the First Balkan War of 1912-13, in which Bulgaria, Serbia, and Greece attempted to eliminate the last vestiges of Ottoman control over the Balkans. At the end of 1912, however, the Ottoman Turks held only the Shkodër garrison, which they did not surrender until April 1913. After the Second Balkan War, when the great powers prevailed upon the Montenegrins who had laid siege to Shkodër to withdraw, independent Albania was recognized. However, less than 50% of the ethnic Albanians living in the Balkans were included within the boundaries of the new state. Large numbers of Albanians were left in Montenegro, Macedonia, and especially Kosovo Sea Glossary, sowing the seeds for potential ethnic conflict in the future. See evolution of national security policy. The World War I began before Albania could establish a viable government, much less form, train, and equip a military establishment. It was essentially a non-combatant nation that served as a battleground for the belligerents. However, during the war, it was occupied alternately by countries of each alliance. In 1916, it was the scene of fighting between Austro-Hungarian forces and Italian, French, and Greek forces. In 1918, the Austro-Hungarians were finally driven out of Albania by the Italians and the French. Albania emerged from the war with its territorial integrity intact, although Serbia, Montenegro, Italy, and Greece had sought to partition it. Italy, in particular, had entered the war on the side of the Triple Entente, with the aim of acquiring parts of northern Albania. See World War I and its effects on Albania, Ch1. Ahmet Zogu created the first armed national forces of any consequence. He served as Minister of the Internal Affairs and Minister of War until 1922, and Prime Minister thereafter, except for a brief period of exile in 1924. Before 1925, these forces consisted of about 5,000 men, who were selected from Zogu's home district to ensure their loyalty to him. In 1925, Albania began drafting men according to a policy of universal conscription that was carried out with Italian assistance and allowed a considerable degree of Italian control. The initial drafts yielded about 5,000 to 6,000 troops per year from the approximately 10,000 men who annually reached the eligible age. The Italians equipped and provided most of the training and tactical guidance to Albanian forces, and therefore exercised virtual command over them. Under pressure from a more proximate Yugoslav threat to its territorial integrity, Albania placed its security in Italian hands in November 1927, when it signed the Second Treaty of Tirana. The original treaty, signed 1 year earlier, pledged the parties to mutual respect for the territorial status quo between them. The successor document established a 20-year alliance and a program of military cooperation between them. Thus, Albania became a virtual protectorate of Italy, with the latter receiving oil rights, permission to build an industrial and military infrastructure, and a high-profile role in Albania's military leadership and domestic political affairs. At about the same time, the gendarmerie was formed with British assistance. Although its director was Albanian, a British general served as its inspector general and other British officers filled its staff. It became an effective internal security and police organization. The gendarmerie had a commandant in each of Albania's 10 prefectures, headquarters in each sub-prefecture, up to 8 in one prefecture, and an office in each of nearly 150 local communities. For many years, it had the most complete telephone system in the country. The Italians objected strenuously, but King Zog, as Zogu became in 1928, relied on the gendarmerie as a personal safeguard against the pervasive Italian influence within his regular armed forces. He kept the force under his direct control and retained its British advisors until 1938. Zog also retained a sizable armed group from his home region as an additional precaution. Albanian resistance during World War II. This page has some issues. Albanian resistance of World War II, part of World War II. Communist partisans in Tirana, November 28, 1944. Result Albanian victory. Result Albanian victory. Belligerents. LNC. Legality movement. Bali Kombatar. Some factions up to September 1943. Kingdom of Italy from 1943. Nazi Germany from 1943 to 1944. Kingdom of Albania. Bali Kombatar from September 1943 to November 1944. Commanders and leaders. Enver Hoxha, Spiro Moisiu, Mehmet Chehu, Kamal Stafa Tiend, Hakshileshi, Baba Faja Martineschi, Abbas Kupi Francesco Giacomoni, Alberto Pariani Herman Neubacher, Shevket Verlacci, 1939 to 1941. Mustafa Merlika Kruja, 1941 to 1943. Ekrem Lebahova, January, February, and May-September 1943. Malik Bushati. February, May 1943. Strength. From approximately 4,000 in 1942 to 70,000 regular partisans and irregular territorial troops in November 1944. More than 600,000 troops stationed or passed through Albania during the period 1939 to 1944. Casualties and losses around, including civilians, 30,000 killed, 12,600 wounded, and 44,500 imprisoned or deported. And 4,495 killed, 21,245 wounded, and 20,800 prisoners. Italian and German casualties too. Total casualties approximately 57,000. Map of Albania during World War II. The Albanian resistance of World War II was a movement of largely communist persuasion directed against the occupying Italian until 1943 and then German forces in Albania, which led to the successful liberation of the country in 1944. The Center for Relief to Civilian Populations Geneva reported that Albania was one of the most devastated countries in Europe. 60,000 houses were destroyed, and about 10% of the population was left homeless. Contents: Communist and Nationalist Resistance, Beginnings of the Communist Movement, Enver Hoxha's and Mehmet Shehu's Early Years, Participation.